I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 96. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. So excited to have you here once again with us on a brand new week. Today, as I'm recording this, is the first day that we kicked off the June sprint, and it's going to be a great month. I mean, we have people running the gamut this month. We have someone who's finishing a book. We have someone who's going to publish an online course. We have a few people who are going to be heavily documenting a series of processes that's going to make everything fly for that part of their firm, free them up. We have a couple of people working on document automation. So just really interesting projects that are going to enable them to fly so much higher when they're done at the end of the month. And the reason I'm doing what we're doing today on the podcast is because it has everything to do with the kinds of things they're working on and the mentality and the framework they're using to accomplish those things. It is something that can be taught. And I talk about it on the podcast. I talk about it in the classes that I teach. I talk about it heavily in the membership that I have and with private clients. But I would like to break it down really simply here for all the listeners on the podcast so that you really understand where we're coming from when I teach what I teach and when I take the approach that I take with coaching. I teach something that I call focus forward framework. Focus forward is the thing that I think that everything we teach helps law firm owners do. So the focus forward framework is essentially broken up into three pieces. The first is that you aim very specifically. You know exactly what you're shooting for. People don't do this well enough. They'll say things that they want, but they won't make it very specific. And it's very difficult to measure progress towards that thing if you aren't very specific. So even if it's well intended, but it lacks specificity, it's going to be tough to stay on track in the same way that you could if you were very specific. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In the sprint today, we kicked off and everybody has to say what was the one result they're going to create in the month of June in this instance. And what is awesome and also fascinating is that they're lofty, right? And especially people who are returning sprinters, they know this method, they know the game, they love it, and that's why they're returning. But when they're giving me their results, it isn't specific enough. It seems like it is, and that's tricky. And this is what I work with people to get better and better for themselves at. The better you are at being hyper specific about what you're shooting for, the faster you will fly towards it. So for example, there were a couple different people who are working on delegation, right? And they want to be able to free up their time more. And so that's something they're going to be focusing on this month. But how do you say that specifically? It isn't easy. And it's very dependent on your situation, your circumstances, what it is you have in your mind that you're going to create. And so one person, we kind of got to the specific result that she's going to create this month is to be fully prepared or determine who she was going to delegate to and what she was going to delegate. That's not easy to get to. So right now she feels a little like, I just know I need to delegate. And I know I need it to be an attorney. So am I going to use a contract attorney? Am I going to use law clerk? I don't know exactly who or the route I'm going to take. And I don't even know what to hand them. I know that I need to hand them things, but I don't know what to hand them. So in that case, the first step for her, the thing that she's really shooting for, and it'll probably take her a couple weeks, not the whole month, but that's fine. Naming it specifically will help her fly towards it. So the thing that she's going to do is to determine who to delegate to and what she's going to delegate. That's very specific. That is a lot more specific than what she was feeling. And that's the only thing she has to focus on. That's it. get there. Now she can use the rest of the focus forward framework, which is make a plan to get to where you're aiming for. And then your job is to honor your plan. So now she can really line herself up behind it and feel really good about, yep, that is going to help me get to that result. That's going to help me get to that result. This step, this step, this step. So aiming is very important, and knowing and learning how to aim well is a skill that can be learned. And that's one piece that I teach people along the way, and that we have to focus on. You have to start there. So with focusing forward, and the reason I want to do a little mini series on this, and we're going to break it up. Focus forward is aim, plan, and honor. That's the 3 phases. Know specifically what you're aiming for. Make a plan, a well thought out, deliberate plan to get you there. There's a way to do that, and a skill that can be learned. And then the third element is, once you have that plan in place, your job is to honor your plan. Now, this never goes perfectly, but it does get smoother the more that you practice it. But here's the thing. If you are trying to do anything, if you're trying to create something, if you're trying to achieve a goal, even if you don't know what the goal is yet, that's okay. You can start to use the framework. But if you're trying to get yourself to a different place, you're trying to create change of some sort, the truth is that you're going to have to do all 3 of these things. But we hem and haw and we stall, or maybe we don't decide specifically what we're aiming for. And so then our plan can't really line up with a specific destination. And so we kind of spin in circles to create the change that we want to see. This framework is so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And it is the way to make sure that you are moving at a good clip towards what you want to create efficiently, as smoothly as possible. So aim is the first step. In this episode, I'm going to dig in with you a little bit deeper on aim. And then next week, we're going to talk about plan. And then the week after that, we're going to talk about honoring the plan. And these 3 elements are so important for anyone who's trying to create anything. This works in regards to you and how you want to grow your firm. It works in regards to you and any personal goals you have around anything, health, relationships, home improvement, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but you have to start thinking of things in this way where you do want to see change and where you want to create a really great result for yourself. So let's come back to aim for a moment, because that's what I really want to dig into today on this podcast episode. Here's the thing. If you are a beginner and you are the kind of person who doesn't necessarily trust yourself when it comes to following through on things, then you need to accept that you're a beginner. And my advice to you, if you aren't going to have coaching and facilitation, right? So if you're just doing this on your own, you're going to apply it on your own. You don't have a coach to work with on this. This is what I do, by the way. And we have a very affordable community that you can plug into to work on this stuff for yourself in regards to growth for your firm on your terms. So this is something we work with. So you don't have to start the beginner phase if you are working with someone who can facilitate. But if you're on your own, I would say start in the beginner wave of this. And what that looks like is picking something very small that you are going to create, a result that you are going to create, but it's not this huge shift or change in your life. It's not going to require a ton of planning, or really you're not going to have to think super hard about how to get there. And it's going to be very easy to honor the plan. It may not always feel easy in the moment, but it's going to be very straightforward. So another way to think about this as a beginner is, sometimes we set goals, and when you kind of reverse engineer backwards, you get to the sub goal. Pick the sub goal. That's what you should start with, is that sub goal. So for instance, if I have someone that I'm working with and I'm facilitating, and so they're going to not pick something so small, they'll pick something larger. Let's say they pick a revenue goal, for example. That's going to be a freaking stretch for them. And they work backwards to figure out, okay, that's what needs to happen these quarters. And then that's what needs to happen this quarter, which means that that's what needs to happen this month over month over month. And they can start to break things down. Well, now you have a monthly goal, for example. That's a sub goal. So if you are a beginner at this, I would just pick that sub goal. What's right in front of you that you can make a stretch and really push yourself to create. Just pick this month, for example. If we're thinking about revenue, pick a revenue goal, pick a number that you're going to meet this month, period. That's your goal. That's what you're going to do. Okay. And once you do that, then you can reverse engineer and figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do to line myself up to be able to create that. And that's the plan part. We'll talk about that next week. But it's something smaller. It's something more right in front of you. It doesn't take a lot of thought in terms of future planning. It's more close to you. And then your job is, in the next episodes, we'll talk about making the plan and honoring the plan, is simplified because of how close to you it is. Now, and you can use this with a health goal. You can use this with, if you want to lose a certain amount of weight, if you want to, maybe there's a project that you want to complete, then you could put that into place, like the completion of this project. Like that's a goal. Getting something done, just make sure it's very specific. So whatever it is, there has to be specificity. And if you are a beginner, pick something close to you. Pick something that is a lower level goal, which sounds bad, but just a closer to you goal. And then you can follow make the plan, honor the plan that we'll talk about over the next couple of weeks, and implement and achieve that goal and experience some follow through for yourself. Because when you experience a sense of completion, it builds that muscle. You learn the process to create something that's closer to you. And then the more that you do that, that muscle strengthens. It's a skill that you develop. And then you can apply it to something bigger and something more beyond what you've already focused on so closely. You could think, a year down the road, you could think 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, and kind of reverse engineer to figure out things. It becomes still very simple, but there's more to think through when you shoot for something bigger. And so that's why I recommend staying close. I would say that an intermediate way to think about this is to pick something a little higher level, maybe just for the year or maybe the entire quarter, but pick something a little bit that's stretched out a bit, but still has to be very specific. So if this is to do with your firm, maybe it is an actual revenue goal where maybe the first time you just decided to pick a project, right? But stretch out a little further, name the goal very specifically. And if you are advanced, you can go out even further. Because when you're in a community and you're being led with this stuff, you can go out further and rely on the coach to help guide you and train you on how to think about those things. When you're on your own, it's different. Turtle steps are the way to go when you're teaching yourself this skill. When people are in my community and my clients, we go the more advanced route, which is having them think about what it is that they want to create for themselves. What do they want their life to look like with specificity? And then we reverse engineer from there. So one way that we can do this is ask, when you think about, 3 years from now or 5 years from now, what do you want your life to look like as a law firm owner, as the human behind the firm? And I ask them, how many days a week do you want to work? How much vacation do you want to take per year? What kind of car do you want to drive? Or do you even care about that? Right? It's like plugging into what you care about and actually what you want to create for yourself, like that end game, and being very, very specific. What kinds of opportunities do you want to make sure that you provide for your children? What kinds of things in the community do you want to be doing at that point? Like, how can you get very specific about curating this ideal existence for yourself? Now, that doesn't take away from right here, right now. We appreciate where we are right here, right now. We actually want what we have right now, and we're working towards a shift. So once you identify what you want your life to look like with specificity, attach numbers to things, the number of hours you want to work or number of days. If there's a certain car you want to be driving, that doesn't matter to everybody, but it does matter to some. Then how much is that car? Like, what kind of car does that mean you need to be able to afford? How much money? So attach numbers to things wherever you can, because then what you want to do is you create this picture of the ideal life that feels really right. And then because of the specificity, you can figure out, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean I need to do in terms of revenue for the firm in order to create that life for myself? And depending on you, what is needed to create that for yourself is going to look very different than the person sitting next to you who's creating for their vision for themselves and their specific ideal result that they want to create for their life. It's going to be a different number. So that's why the more you get clued in on, oh, okay, this is what I might like to look like. This is what it would take in order to support that. Then if I work backwards, then that means that's what I need to bring home. What does that mean the firm needs to generate so that I can take home that amount? And then if I reverse engineer, that means the firm needs to create that. So then the firm needs to generate this the year prior and this the year prior and this the year prior. If we're going like projections on growth or estimations about where you need to be in order to create that for yourself. So there is a reverse engineering process that we facilitate, which I'll talk about in the planning episode. But that's why it's so important to aim in this way when you're working at an advanced level, is because it checks the boxes of you and what makes you tick and what do you want to create for yourself. This is important because it plugs you into the why. So many people will just pick a revenue number for the sake of picking a revenue number. And listen to me, that is okay. If you're a beginner and you just are trying to get your feet wet and watch yourself and really blow your own mind with what you can create, it's almost like proving to yourself that, oh, I can fulfill that. That's really great. That is useful. But once you've done it and you've trusted yourself, like, oh, I name a result and I know how I can use this framework to get myself there, period. I know that. I can trust the framework. I can trust the focus forward framework, aim, plan, and honor. I do that every time with a small goal or with a large goal, doesn't matter. Once you trust yourself with that, then it's time to think beyond what you can see as possible in the immediate future. And that is what will plug you into why, your compelling reason for creating whatever revenue number you pick for the firm. It's based on you and what you want for your life, your lifestyle. So it feels like kind of going all over the place with aim, but the point is you have to aim for something extremely specific. And a beginner way to do that, if you're not going to do it with facilitation and coaching, is to pick something very, very doable. It's a project that needs to be done. And you set the deadline for yourself, and this project is going to be completed, and you are going to take action until that's completed. Very consistent turtle step action until it's completed, which you can think through with the plan. But it's just committing. This whole part is just about committing to something very specific. There's no room for interpretation if you did it or you didn't do it. Everyone knows based on how you framed and how you said, like, this is what I'm shooting for. Everyone knows when you got there, and you could pat yourself on the back and you can, give yourself a round of applause and celebrate. And then you pick the next thing, right? But picking that is very, very, very important. I also talk about this in the way that it's almost like setting a destination in your GPS. If you think about when you get in the car and you want to go somewhere and you don't know how to get there, if you don't put a destination in your GPS, then it can't spit out any routes for you to take. That is the same thing when we're thinking about the goal. Truthfully, when you put a destination in the GPS, your GPS can actually give you several routes that you could take, potentially more than one. We know that for sure. So it's the same thing with how we think about what we want to create in our own lives. You have to put the destination in. You have to say specifically, this is the GPS coordinates that I need to hit. And now, when it is time to plan, which we'll talk about, you can reverse engineer, and there's different ways to get there. But you can't get anywhere very quickly if you're not aiming for something very specific. If you don't have the destination claimed, stated, then it's very difficult to line yourself up with ease and flow towards where you want to go. So when we think about the focus forward framework, which is something I teach heavily, because it doesn't matter who you are. If you miss one of the elements, if you don't aim well, then you can't plan well, and then you can't really honor a plan well. Or maybe some people aim well, but they suck at making plans, like really good, well thought out plans. Then it's going to be very hard to honor a plan. Honoring the plan is really about execution. So if you don't have that stuff lined up, what are you supposed to execute on? Right? So all three of these things are very important. And today we're focusing on aim. And I want each of you listening to this, I really want to encourage you. If you're with me, you're aiming for things for specific, if you're in my groups or a client. But if you are just a listener and this is how you prefer to interact with velocity work, I want you to pick something that you are aiming for very specifically. If you're a beginner, then pick a project that is doable. It feels like it's been on the back burner. It's going to take some stretch to get there to actually get it completed, but you can do it. Pick a project, or you could pick maybe a revenue goal or that's really close to you for the month, or maybe a new client's goal. That could be something very specific that you're shooting for the month, maybe. So whatever it is, pick something close to you if you're a beginner, but make it so specific that you know when you cross the finish line. If you are intermediate, I would say definitely pick a revenue goal. If we're talking about your firm and growth for the firm, pick a revenue goal and go out a ways. You can decide how far you want to go out. Maybe it's a quarter, maybe it's for the year, and you're going to take what I give you in the next couple episodes to figure out how to reverse engineer, but make it a revenue goal, because there's so much that has to stack up behind a revenue goal. In order to hit a revenue goal, you got to do these other specific things. And that's what you'll get really clear about. That's an intermediate way of thinking about this. And an advanced way of thinking about aiming is to think out in terms of what your ideal lifestyle that you want to create for yourself, the ideal ways that you want to spend your time in your life and how you want it to run. You think about that and you put numbers to it as much as you can. You make it measurable as much as possible. And then you can start to figure out, okay, so what's a good goal that will support all of that? And that's an advanced way to think about it. And if I were you as a law firm owner, I would figure out what you need to take home in order to support your lifestyle. And then once you know what you have to take home, what does that mean the firm needs to make in order for you to take that home? So then you have a law firm goal in that time span. So this is hopefully helpful for you guys to start thinking about aiming. When anyone joins Mastery Group now, we have a really cool member area set up I say cool because it freaking is. It's an amazing member area with resources. And one of the resources you get immediately is the Focus Forward framework. And it's 3 videos of me talking, actually 4. There's an intro, and then I go into each of the elements of Focus Forward framework. And you guys can deepen your understanding of it so that all the work you do with me and inside of Velocity Work you can just fly towards what you want. All right, everybody. So that is AIM. AIM specifically, the first part of the Focus Forward framework. Next week, we'll be back with the second part, which is planning. And then the week after that, the third part, which is honoring the plan. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.